I never imagined that my life would split into a before and an after. Before the betrayal, and after the moment everything I trusted collapsed beneath my feet. People think strength is loud, explosive, or dramatic, but mine came quietly, like a breath I didn't know I was holding. And it all began the day he tried to break me. I remember waking up with this strange heaviness in my chest, the kind you can't explain but can feel pulling at your bones. Something inside me knew the truth before I saw it. Before the messages. Before the lies. Before the silence that cut sharper than any words he could have said. He didn't leave with noise. He didn't fight. He simply slipped away, taking pieces of my confidence with him, as if my worth was something he could pack in his pockets and walk out the door with. I stood there, staring at the empty space he left behind, wondering how a person could carry so much damage in one quiet departure. But it wasn't the loss that hurt the most. It was realizing how long I had been shrinking to make him comfortable. How long I had softened my voice, my dreams, my edges. All for someone who never intended to stay. I kept asking myself what I had done wrong. And the truth was painful. I had trusted someone who mistook my kindness for weakness. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not loudly but deeply. A small spark, the kind that flickers before it becomes a flame. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of my rebirth. The moment when losing everything forced me to see myself clearly for the first time in years. In the days that followed, silence became my closest companion. It wrapped around me like a cold fog, settling into every corner of my home, every corner of my mind. I kept replaying his last moments with me. The half-hearted smiles, the distracted eyes, the way he spoke like he was already somewhere else. It all made sense now, but it didn't make the pain any easier. I moved through each day slowly, almost mechanically, as if my body remembered the motions even when my heart didn't. I cooked meals I couldn't eat. I opened curtains I didn't care to look through. I sat in rooms that felt too large because his absence echoed louder than any sound. But the strange thing about heartbreak is that it forces you to confront yourself. With him gone, I was left with nothing but my own reflection, a version of me I hardly recognized. Tired eyes. A quieter spirit. A woman who had given so much without ever noticing how empty she'd become. And yet, beneath that exhaustion, beneath that ache, there was something else growing. Something steady. A kind of clarity that only comes once the noise of someone else's lies disappears. For the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. What about me? What about my dreams? My peace? My identity, the one I had dimmed so he could shine? The answers didn't come easily, but they came honestly. I started realizing that his betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. It wasn't proof that I wasn't enough. It was simply evidence of who he was, and who I no longer needed to be. And slowly, the silence that once felt like punishment began to feel like freedom. A space for healing. A space to rebuild myself without the weight of someone who never saw my value. I didn't rise overnight. I didn't transform instantly. But with every small step, I felt pieces of myself returning, stronger, clearer, more certain than before. As the days stretched on, I began noticing all the little things I had ignored while I was trying to hold us together. The unanswered questions. The shifting stories. The late-night silences that always seemed to have shadows behind them. I used to convince myself that love required patience, forgiveness, and understanding. But now I see that what I called patience was really me abandoning myself piece by piece. One afternoon, while sorting through old messages, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness, not anger, but clarity. The kind of clarity that settles in your bones like truth finally finding a home. I saw how he had taken advantage of my loyalty, how he relied on the softness of my heart as if it were a resource he could exhaust without consequence. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. I walked around my home differently that day. Every room held memories, but they no longer felt like wounds. They felt like lessons, reminders of a version of me who tried, who loved honestly, who stayed long after she had been forgotten. And instead of resenting her, I felt proud of her. Because she survived what should have destroyed her. It was in that moment I understood something powerful. He didn't leave because I lacked something. He left because he expected me to stay small forever. But I was changing. Quietly, steadily, undeniably. I started journaling late at night, writing things I had never said out loud. All the ways I compromised, all the moments I apologized for things that weren't my fault. All the pieces of myself I had hidden to keep peace that was never real. With every word I wrote, I felt myself reclaiming territory inside my own mind. This wasn't just healing. This was rediscovery. A slow, tender return to my own strength. Healing didn't come in some dramatic wave. It came in small, almost invisible moments, like the first time I woke up and didn't feel that crushing weight on my chest. Or the morning I made coffee and actually noticed how warm the cup felt in my hands. Tiny moments that whispered, "You're still here. You're still living." One evening I stepped outside just as the sun was sinking behind the rooftops. The sky looked like it was painted in bruised shades of pink and gold, broken, yet breathtaking. I stood there, letting the wind brush against my face, and something inside me softened. It was the first time in a long time I felt connected to the world around me, not trapped behind the glass of my own hurt. I realized then that life had been happening all around me, while I was drowning in someone else's choices. And slowly I began to reclaim those pieces too, the ones that made me feel alive before I ever knew him. I started taking long walks with no destination, letting my thoughts wander without fear. I cooked meals for myself and sat at the table instead of eating in silence by the window. I even laughed one afternoon. A real laugh, unexpected and warm. And it startled me because I couldn't remember the last time joy had found its way into my voice. And with each day, his memory faded a little more. Not because I forced it, but because I was making room for myself again. The woman I was becoming didn't revolve around him. She didn't chase his validation. She didn't shrink at the thought of being alone. She was learning to stand in her own light. I realized something profound. I had spent years pouring love into someone who never intended to stay, while forgetting to pour any into myself. But now I was ready to rebuild. Not from the remnants of what he left behind, but from the strength I was discovering inside my own heart. It was the day I ran into Sophia at the grocery store that I truly understood the ripple effect of courage. She approached me hesitantly, her eyes a mixture of gratitude and awe. "You're Frida Jackson, aren't you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I nodded, unsure of what to say. And then she spoke words that etched themselves into my soul. Thank you for speaking out, for defending the truth. Because of you, we recovered some of our money. Not all, but enough to start again." Her words made my chest ache. I remembered the years she had been trapped in silence, the fear of standing up against a father who had built his life on lies. I understood her pain because it had been mine, the fear of being alone, of failing my children, of standing against a world that seemed too powerful to challenge. And yet, in that moment, I saw hope reflected in her eyes. My actions, my voice had inspired another woman to confront her truth, to reclaim her life from the shadows of deceit. I hugged her, feeling a warmth that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. That hug wasn't just comfort for her. It was healing for me too. I saw in her courage the proof that standing for the truth mattered, that even when the cost seemed insurmountable, the ripple of bravery could reach further than we ever imagined. And I thought about the countless nights I had spent wrestling with the decision to speak or stay silent. The fear that kept me awake, the tears that no one saw, the burden of protecting a child while exposing a lie that could shatter everything. All of it had led to this moment. And in that moment I knew, the truth was never just mine to bear. It belonged to everyone who needed courage to find their own voice. Life had a strange, quiet way of balancing itself, and in seeing Sophia reclaim her power, I felt the first true peace I had known in decades. A few months later, life gave me another quiet reminder of the truth's power. I ran into Martha Hernandez at the supermarket, the woman who had lost her life savings because of Mr. Sterling. She looked different somehow, not just older but lighter, freer. When she recognized me, her eyes lit up. "Mrs. Jackson, how are you?" she asked. I smiled warmly. "Fine, Martha. And you?" "Better. Much better," she said, her voice firm but gentle. She told me how, after everything, she and her husband had managed to recover some of the money. Not all, but enough to buy a small piece of land. "We're building our house ourselves," she said, and I could see the pride in her eyes. "Little by little. But it's ours. And it's honest. No lies. No deception. And that gives us peace." I felt tears prick my eyes. There was a quiet, undeniable beauty in what she had created. A house built with sweat, honesty, and resilience. A stark contrast to the empty grandeur that Mr. Sterling had spent his life pursuing. Martha took my hands, and in that moment I realized something profound. My courage had done more than protect my family. It had given other women the permission to fight, to rebuild, to reclaim dignity in their own lives. I told her gently, "No, Martha. You changed your own life. I just spoke the truth, but it was your bravery that built this peace." She nodded, squeezing my hands tightly, as if to say thank you and to affirm the bond we shared. Two women who had endured the weight of deceit and emerged stronger, wiser, unbroken. Walking home that day, I thought about how small acts of courage ripple outward in ways we often cannot see. Every choice I had made, every word I had spoken at the country club, had become part of a larger story. A story of justice, resilience, and the quiet triumph of truth. And I understood that, at last, my journey was no longer just about me. Another year passed, and Michael turned 3. He was the brightest, most curious little boy, full of laughter and wonder. Watching him play reminded me daily of why I had chosen truth over silence, why I had fought when so many would have preferred me to stay quiet. To had been promoted at his job, now a project manager. Not rich but living with dignity and integrity, a man I could respect. Sophia had completed her master's in architecture and was designing eco-friendly homes. Seeing her thrive reminded me that courage and perseverance are always contagious. One afternoon T came to visit. He looked uneasy, and I could tell he carried news he wasn't sure how to deliver. "Mom," he said cautiously, "do you remember Mr. Sterling?" I nodded, the memory of that night at the country club still vivid in my mind. "Why?" he asked. Sophia explained that he was very sick, that his body was failing him in ways the prison could not fully treat. Diabetes, infections, complications. He had become fragile, thin, and pale. I felt a pang of sadness, but I also reminded myself of the truth. Consequences follow actions. He had spent his life pursuing lies and power, and now he would face the results. Sophia was struggling with what to do, torn between fear and a sense of duty. I told her simply, "Go for yourself, not for him. Go to close a chapter, not to save him." She nodded, taking a deep breath, understanding that forgiveness and closure are separate from condoning wrongdoing. 2 weeks later, she visited him. When she returned, her eyes were red, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. "It was difficult," she said. "He's a shadow of the man I once called my father. But I said what I needed to say, and I finally feel some peace." I hugged her tightly. "That's all you can ever ask for, Sophia. Peace is yours to claim, not his." Months went by and the seasons changed, carrying with them the subtle rhythm of life. Michael was now 4, full of questions that made me both smile and reflect. One Sunday afternoon, the whole family came over for dinner. to Sophia, Michael, and even Mrs. Sterling. I prepared a spicy stew, the aroma filling the house, blending with laughter and the warmth of our shared presence. As we ate, we told stories, the kind that stitch families together. Michael, curious as ever, looked up with wide eyes. "Grandma, why didn't I meet my other grandpa?" The room went silent. I glanced at Sophia, who nodded, giving me the quiet permission to speak. I knelt in front of him, looking into his innocent eyes. "Because your other grandpa made bad choices, my love. Choices that had consequences. Life teaches us lessons, and he had to learn them too." Michael's forehead scrunched as he thought. "What are consequences?" he asked. I smiled softly. "Consequences are what happen when we do something wrong. They help us understand, so we don't repeat mistakes." Michael's little face lit up with understanding. "Then I'll do good things so I have good consequences," he said proudly. My heart swelled and I hugged him tight, realizing that this child, raised in truth and love, could indeed change the world. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my rocking chair, staring at the photos on the wall, Tito as a child, his wedding, Michael's birthdays, and I understood the journey we had traveled. From betrayal and fear to courage, justice, and finally peace. Life had taught me that justice is not vengeance but balance. That telling the truth, defending those you love, and choosing dignity always bears fruit. A few months later, Sophia invited me to a conference. I remember the morning vividly. The sunlight spilling into my kitchen, the aroma of fresh coffee filling the air, and the nervous excitement that fluttered in my chest. I had been asked to accompany her, and I didn't know what to expect. The topic was women entrepreneurs, but the moment we arrived, I realized it was much bigger than that. It was about courage, about truth, about the invisible battles that women fight every single day. Sophia went on stage first, ready to talk about her work as an architect. But then she paused, her eyes scanning the crowd, and she said something I will never forget. "Before I speak about architecture, I want to tell you about my mother-in-law, Frida Jackson." My heart skipped. She had pointed at me. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me. I felt my cheeks flush, a mix of embarrassment and pride twisting together. She spoke with such honesty, her voice trembling at times, strong at others. She told them how 3 years ago her life had crumbled when she discovered her father's deceit, how she had felt lost, and how I had shown her that truth, even when it hurts, makes us stronger. She recounted how I stood up at a moment when silence was expected, how I defended what was right, and how that choice had changed her life. As I listened, tears stung my eyes. The women in the audience applauded, some standing, some wiping tears. And I realized that my actions, my simple act of courage, had rippled out far beyond what I could have imagined. After the applause, Sophia came down from the stage and hugged me tightly. Her embrace was warm, yet it carried a weight, the weight of all the years of fear, silence, and betrayal she had endured. "Thank you, Mrs. Jackson," she whispered. "You saved me. You showed me what it means to stand up, to speak, to fight for what is right." I held her and felt a wave of emotion that I hadn't felt in years. Pride, relief, love, and a deep, abiding peace all rolled together. I realized in that moment that the decisions I had made, the courage I had summoned, were no longer mine alone. They had become a part of her, and through her, a part of the world. Walking back to the hotel lobby, hand in hand, I thought about how life had a strange way of balancing itself. Humphrey Sterling had had power, wealth, and admiration, yet he died alone, stripped of everything that mattered most. And I, who had never sought power or riches, had something he could never understand: family, love, peace, and the unshakable certainty that I had done right. The realization filled me with a quiet joy, one that came not from applause or recognition, but from knowing that integrity had a way of surviving even the darkest moments. Later that evening, as Sophia and I sat quietly in the hotel lounge, watching the city lights flicker outside, I reflected on the past 5 years. I thought about the nights I had stayed awake, worrying if I had made the right choices, fearing that speaking the truth might destroy the little I had left. And yet every decision, every moment of fear turned into courage, every tear shed turned into strength, had led us here. Life had given us balance, not vengeance, peace instead of revenge, and a legacy that could outlive even the silence of death. A few weeks later, I found myself sitting in my living room, the sunlight spilling across the floor in long golden stripes. Michael was playing on the carpet, laughing and building towers with his blocks, completely lost in his world of imagination. Tu and Sophia were nearby, sharing stories and planning little projects, their voices blending into a quiet symphony of life continuing, thriving, and healing. I watched them and felt a profound gratitude, a recognition that despite the chaos, the betrayal, and the fear, we had survived, and more importantly, we had flourished. That afternoon, a knock on the door interrupted my reverie. It was Martha Hernandez, the woman whose life had been devastated by Mr. Sterling's lies. Her eyes sparkled with gratitude and something deeper, something I had never expected, hope. "Mrs. Jackson," she said softly, "I just wanted to thank you. Truly, what you did, it changed everything. Not just for me but for so many of us. Because of you we fought back, we reclaimed what was ours, and we found the courage to rebuild." I felt a lump in my throat, a mixture of pride and humility. "No, Martha," I said gently. "You did this. I only showed the way. You chose to stand up, to fight, to live with honesty." We sat together, sharing tea, and I realized that the ripples of courage and truth I had set in motion had spread far beyond my family. They had touched women I would never meet, families I would never know, lives transformed quietly by the courage to speak. That realization filled me with a warmth, a steady, unshakable sense that even in a world marred by lies, deceit, and betrayal, truth and integrity always endure. The following year brought new rhythms to our lives, quiet but full of meaning. Michael turned 4, and his curiosity knew no bounds. Every question, every small discovery, reminded me how precious time was and how fragile innocence could be. I watched him run through the park, his laughter weaving through the air, and I thought of the boy I had once held in my arms on the night of the country club. Scared, uncertain, witnessing the unraveling of lies that threatened to crush his world. Now he was thriving, a testament to resilience, to love, and to the quiet, persistent courage that had shaped our lives. Sophia had blossomed in her work as an architect, designing eco-friendly homes that carried both beauty and purpose. Every project she completed reminded me that integrity could coexist with ambition, that success did not have to be tainted with compromise. And too steady and reliable, continued to grow into a man I was proud to call my son, not because of what he had, but because of the choices he made, grounded in honesty and respect. One evening as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Sophia approached me quietly. "Mom," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I went to see my father today. At his grave." My heart skipped. "And?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. She sat beside me, the fading light illuminating her thoughtful expression. "I forgave him," she whispered. "Not for him but for me. I let go of the anger, the blame, the weight I had carried for so long. And for the first time I felt free. Truly free." I reached out and took her hand, feeling the same surge of pride I had felt years before when she first took a stand for the truth. That moment crystallized something I had known all along. Forgiveness was not weakness. It was liberation. It was a choice that allowed life to move forward, to heal, to flourish. And in that choice, in her courage, I saw the continuation of our legacy, the thread of truth and dignity stretching into the next generation. The following months brought ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because of their simplicity. Breakfasts together, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, Michael's small hands reaching for mine, each one a reminder that life in its quiet beauty had reclaimed us. I often sat in my rocking chair by the window, watching the sunrise spill gold across the city, thinking about the long path that had brought us here. The nights of uncertainty, the tears, the sleepless hours, they were behind us, replaced by moments of presence, of peace, of connection. And yet, even in these serene moments, the memory of Humphrey Sterling lingered, a shadow that reminded me that choices had consequences. Sophia and I talked often about that night at the country club, about the courage it had taken to speak out. I told her, "Courage isn't a roar, it's a whisper that says, 'I will not stay silent.'" And she understood because she had lived it herself in her own way, through confronting her father, standing up for her beliefs, and now building her own family rooted in honesty. One Sunday afternoon, Tito and Sophia came over for a casual visit. Michael ran into my arms as I opened the door, laughter spilling from both of us. That evening, while I was baking cookies in the kitchen, Sophia pulled me aside into the garden, where the flowers were in full bloom, and spoke in a quiet, reflective tone. "Mom," she said, "I want to tell you something about what I felt when I forgave him." I listened, heart steadying as she continued. It was like a weight lifted, like I could finally breathe. And I realized that everything you taught me, about truth, about courage, about dignity, was guiding me even now. I hugged her under the flowering trees, feeling the warmth of generations intertwined. It struck me then that my story was no longer mine alone. It was in Sophia, it was in Michael, it would live on in Frida, the daughter they were expecting. And in that living, breathing legacy, I understood the deepest truth of all. That what we leave behind isn't measured in wealth or accolades, but in love, courage, and the unshakable choice to do what is right. The news of Sophia's pregnancy brought a flood of emotions I hadn't felt in years. Joy, yes, but also a profound sense of responsibility. This little life, yet to arrive, would inherit not only our family name but the values we had fought so hard to uphold. When Sophia told me they had decided to name her Frida, I felt my chest tighten, tears streaming down my face. Frida, my name, my story, my legacy would live on in her. I held Sophia's hands and whispered, "May she grow strong, honest, and brave just like you've become." Every day since then, I found myself more reflective, more aware of the quiet power of ordinary acts. The small routines, the tender words, the shared laughter. They were the invisible threads weaving a tapestry of resilience, truth, and love. Michael, now 5, was a curious, bright boy who asked questions that revealed his gentle wisdom beyond his years. One morning over breakfast, he looked at me with wide, serious eyes and asked, "Grandma, when you're really old, will you die?" My heart ached and I knelt before him, taking his tiny hands in mine. "Yes, my love. One day my body will no longer be here, but every time you tell the truth, every time you stand up for what is right, I will be with you. Always." Those words, though simple, felt like a promise, a bridge between generations. Because what I realized in that moment was that our actions echo beyond the immediate, beyond the visible. Each brave choice we make sends ripples forward, shaping lives we may never see. And now, as I watched Michael run through the garden, laughing in pure delight, I understood that every tear, every sacrifice, every fear faced in silence had been worth it. We had survived not by avoiding pain, but by facing it with honesty, dignity, and unwavering love. The garden had become a sanctuary, a place where life and memory intertwined. Flowers bloomed in bursts of color, the scent of wet earth and petals filling the air. Sophia and Michael ran ahead, their laughter a melody that wrapped around my heart. I lingered behind, savoring the peace we had fought so hard to achieve. In that quiet, I remembered the long nights after Tito and I had endured the storm of lies and betrayal, when every decision felt like a choice between survival and surrender. And now, here we were, not unscathed but whole in ways that mattered far more than wealth or recognition. Later, as we settled into the rocking chairs on the porch, Sophia spoke softly. Mom, I went to visit my father's grave today. I turned to her, sensing both hesitation and strength in her voice. She continued, I told him I forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace. My heart swelled with pride. Forgiveness, the kind that sets the soul free, was a lesson that had taken decades to fully understand. And now I watched it pass from me to my daughter-in-law, from one generation to the next, a living testament to resilience and love. Michael climbed onto my lap, resting his head against my chest, and whispered, Grandma, you're my hero. I held him close, feeling the weight of those words. Heroism, I realized, wasn't about grandeur or applause. It was about love, courage, and choosing truth when silence seemed easier. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every tear had shaped the person I was now. A woman who had survived, protected, and left a legacy far richer than money or accolades. In that moment, the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson, and I felt the quiet, steady pulse of life affirming all that I had learned. That night, after Michael had fallen asleep and the house grew quiet, I sat alone by the window with a cup of tea. The city lights flickered in the distance, mirroring the countless memories that swirled in my mind. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the nights of fear and doubt when I questioned every decision, to the moments of clarity when I realized that truth, though painful, was the only path to freedom. Every lie I had endured, every betrayal I had witnessed, had been a lesson in disguise, shaping my understanding of courage, love, and justice. I opened my journal, the one that had captured my thoughts over so many years, and began to read. The pages smelled faintly of ink and hope. I traced the words I had written after that fateful night at the country club, the night when everything changed. Life doesn't always give us what we deserve, I had written. But if we are brave, if we defend the truth, if we protect those we love, life gives us something better. It gives us inner peace. I smiled softly, realizing that those words had not aged. They were still true. They reflected not only my journey but the path of all women who chose to rise above fear and silence, who chose dignity over comfort, courage over complacency. I thought about Sophia and Michael, and the child growing in her womb, little Frida. Her name alone carried the weight of legacy, a tribute to the strength and bravery that had been passed down. I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose and peace, knowing that the choices I had made rippled through generations, shaping a future built on honesty, courage, and love. In that quiet, I made a promise to myself. I would continue to live with truth, to protect my family, and to embrace the life I had earned through integrity and sacrifice. The next morning, the sunlight poured into the kitchen, warming the wooden floor and illuminating the small garden outside. I watched Sophia prepare breakfast with gentle movements, Michael laughing as he tried to steal a bite of toast before it was ready. There was a harmony in that chaos, a sense of life moving forward despite the shadows of the past. I realized then that happiness wasn't found in grand gestures or wealth. It was in these small moments: shared laughter, the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of a child's voice echoing through the house. Sophia looked up from her cooking and caught my gaze. "Mom," she said softly, "do you ever regret anything?" I paused, feeling the weight of every choice I had made. Regret. It was a word that once haunted me, tied to all the silences I had endured, all the times I had doubted myself. But now, looking at her and Michael, at the life we had rebuilt, I understood that regret only exists if we fail to learn from our mistakes. "No, honey," I replied, my voice steady. "I've lost things, yes. I faced fear, yes. But every challenge, every decision, every moment of courage has brought us here. And here is exactly where we need to be." Michael ran past me, waving a piece of toast in triumph, and I laughed, my heart swelling with love. I thought about Humphrey Sterling, the man who had once wielded power with arrogance, only to lose it all. His fate was a stark reminder that life balances itself, that truth and honesty are the only currencies that endure. And then in a quiet, almost reverent tone, I whispered to myself, "This is my legacy. This is the life I fought for. And I will protect it with every ounce of my being." Later that day, I found myself sitting in the rocking chair by the window again, the soft hum of the city below filling the quiet space. The journal lay open on my lap, its pages worn but full of the lessons, fears, and triumphs of the past years. I traced my fingers over the ink, remembering the tears and the resolve that had filled me when I first wrote each line. It amazed me how writing could heal wounds, how capturing truth on paper could free a soul weighed down by silence and fear. Sophia came in quietly, holding Michael's hand. She knelt beside me and whispered, "Mom, can I show you something?" Curiosity piqued, I nodded, and she led me to the living room, where Michael had built a tower of blocks, carefully stacking them one by one. "Look, Grandma," he said proudly, "I made a castle." I knelt beside him, admiring his creation, seeing not just the blocks but the care, patience, and determination it represented. And in that moment I realized that everything we endure, every truth we fight for, is like a block in a castle. Some may fall, some may crumble, but the effort, the love, the resilience, that is what makes it strong, that is what makes it last. I hugged Michael tightly, feeling his small heartbeat against mine. And I thought about the countless mothers, daughters, and women like us, carrying burdens in silence. I wanted to tell them all that bravery isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. It's about standing in truth when the world expects you to bow to comfort or fear. And I whispered to myself, "This story, my story, is more than just about what I lived. It is about what others will live because I chose courage over silence." That evening after dinner, I stayed in the kitchen while Tito and Sophia cleaned up. The aroma of the stew lingered, mixing with the soft scent of the blooming flowers from the open window. I sat down with a cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into my hands, thinking about how far we had all come. Michael was asleep upstairs, and the house felt peaceful in a way it never had when fear or lies hovered over us. I found myself reflecting on Humphrey Sterling one last time. I thought about the letters, the visits, the moments of confrontation and forgiveness. He had been a man of immense power and wealth, but he died alone, stripped of everything that truly mattered. And I realized something crucial. The measure of a person is not in what they own, the influence they wield, or the admiration they command. It is in the love they leave behind, the integrity they hold when no one is watching, and the truth they refuse to compromise. I had chosen differently. I had chosen love over fear, truth over silence, dignity over appearances. And that had been everything. Sophia returned to the room, sitting beside me. She held my hand and said softly, "Mom, I don't think I ever properly thanked you for everything. For teaching me, for showing me what strength really is." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "You don't need to thank me, honey. You lived it. You learned it. And now you'll pass it on. That's enough." Her eyes glistened with tears, and I realized that the legacy of courage, honesty, and love we had fought so hard to preserve was already thriving in the next generation. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in my rocking chair by the window, the city lights twinkling below, and thought about everything. The struggles, the sleepless nights, the fear of speaking the truth, and the courage it took to face it all. I realized that my story was never just mine. It belonged to every woman who had ever been silenced, to every child who had been lied to every family seeking dignity over deception. I understood finally that bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in spite of it. I thought about Michael, asleep in his bed upstairs, and I whispered a silent promise. I will leave him a world built on truth, on love, on honesty. I will leave him a legacy that no one can steal, no one can corrupt. That night, as I held my cup of tea and watched the stars, I wrote a final note in my journal. The note that I hope one day my granddaughter Frida will read. I told her to be brave, to speak the truth even when it's hard, to defend those she loves, and to know that life's truest rewards are not wealth, fame, or approval. They are peace, love, dignity, and the courage to stand for what is right. And so, to you listening, to you reading this, don't be afraid to stand up. Don't be afraid to say enough. Don't be afraid to tell the truth. Brave women change the world, one truth at a time, one family at a time, one generation at a time. Your courage matters. Your voice matters. Your love matters. And just like I did, you can leave behind a legacy that no one will ever take from you. The legacy of truth, the legacy of love, the legacy of a life lived with dignity. Be brave. Speak up. Protect what matters. And know that you are never alone in doing what is right. The next morning I woke to the soft sunlight spilling through the curtains, and I felt a calm I hadn't felt in years. I thought about the choices I had made, the nights I had cried, the moments I had feared I would fail. And yet here I was, surrounded by my family, my heart full, my soul lighter than ever. Life had taught me something profound. Truth is never wasted. Every act of courage, every word spoken, every risk taken in defense of what is right ripples outward in ways we cannot always see. I went to the kitchen and brewed my coffee slowly, savoring the aroma and warmth. Michael's laughter echoed from the living room as he played with his toys, and I smiled, thinking about how small actions build legacies. I thought about the women I had inspired, the daughters, mothers, and grandmothers who had found their voices because I dared to speak. And I understood that my life, my struggles, my tears, they were not only my own. They were a bridge, a map, a guide for others navigating the stormy seas of fear and injustice. Later that day, Sophia and Tito came to sit with me. We shared stories, laughed at old memories, and planned small joys for the future. Sophia held my hands and said, "Mom, you didn't just save me. You saved generations yet to come." I looked at her, tears welling up, and realized that this was the true reward. Not recognition, not applause, but the quiet knowledge that our choices, our courage, our truths shape the world for those we love and for those we will never even meet. That evening I stepped into the garden, where the air smelled of earth and blooming flowers. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and gold, and I felt the weight of the years fall away just for a moment. I thought about Humphrey Sterling, how he had chased power and money while losing everything that truly mattered. I thought about his loneliness, his regrets, and how his life had become a cautionary tale. And yet I did not feel anger anymore. Not really. I felt understanding. Life teaches lessons in its own time, in its own way, and no amount of bitterness could change the past. I thought about forgiveness, about Sophia, visiting her father's grave, speaking words she hadn't believed she could ever say. "I forgive you." It wasn't for him. It was for her. And that, I realized, was one of life's most powerful truths. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It doesn't undo mistakes. But it frees the heart, it unchains the soul, and it allows love to grow even where sorrow once lived. I breathed deeply, feeling the cool breeze, thinking of all the women who had found courage through my actions, and I knew that our stories are threads in the fabric of life, threads of resilience, of truth, of courage. And in that quiet I made a promise to myself, to keep living, to keep loving, to keep defending what is right, and to keep passing on the legacy of bravery, honesty, and dignity to those who come after me. Because the world needs brave hearts, steadfast souls, and women who refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my living room, painting the walls with gold. Michael was already awake, chattering with the kind of joy only a 5-year-old can carry. I watched him from the rocking chair, the soft creak under me, feeling the rhythm of life in the small moments, his laughter, his tiny hands gripping mine, the warmth of family surrounding me. These were the moments that made all the struggles, all the tears, all the fear worth it. This was the real wealth, the true legacy. Sophia came in, rubbing her eyes, still carrying the weight of being a mother, a daughter, and a woman who had learned to face life's harsh truths with courage. She looked at me and smiled, and I saw in her eyes a reflection of every lesson I had tried to teach. That bravery isn't always loud, that power doesn't always shine in gold, and that honesty can heal wounds deeper than any medicine. "Mom," she said softly, "I think Michael really understands now. He knows what it means to stand for what's right." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. Later that day, Tito called, his voice calm but tinged with emotion. He wanted to hear my stories, the ones that had shaped our family, the ones that had taught him that courage sometimes comes wrapped in silence and sacrifice. And as I spoke, telling him about nights filled with uncertainty, about the choices I made when fear threatened to paralyze me, I realized that storytelling itself is a form of legacy. Each word, each lesson, each memory I shared was a seed planted in the hearts of those I loved. And just like seeds, they would grow, carrying the truth, courage, and dignity into the future. That evening, the house was quiet. Michael had already fallen asleep, his soft breathing a reminder of how precious these days are, how fleeting childhood is. Sophia and Tito sat across from me, sipping tea, sharing small smiles and quiet conversations that didn't need words to express love. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The night at the country club, the lies, the betrayal, the fear that had once threatened to consume me, and I marveled at how life had turned it all into something beautiful. I remembered the women I had met along the way, Martha Hernandez, and the others who had found courage because of a single act of truth. Their faces came to me like echoes of hope, each story intertwined with mine, each act of bravery forming a chain that could not be broken. I realized then that courage is contagious. One voice, one act of honesty can ripple outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. That thought filled me with warmth, a satisfaction deeper than any applause, any recognition. As the night deepened, I walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker below. Each home, each life, a story unfolding. Struggles hidden behind walls, victories and heartbreaks interwoven. I felt gratitude for survival, for love, for lessons learned the hard way. I whispered softly into the darkness, "This is why we speak. This is why we fight. This is why we choose truth." Because truth isn't just a principle. It's a lifeline, a gift, a torch that lights the path for those who come after. And in that moment I felt it. The legacy I had created, not in wealth or fame, but in hearts shaped by honesty, love, and dignity. As I sit by the window watching the sunlight spill across the garden, I feel a quiet sense of completion. The journey that began with fear, doubt, and uncertainty has led me here, to this moment of peace and understanding. Life has taught me that courage is not about grand gestures or applause. It is about choosing truth over comfort, dignity over approval, love over fear. I have lived long enough to see the ripples of my choices spread far beyond myself, into the lives of my children, my grandson, my daughter-in-law, and even strangers who found their courage through my example. And now, as I reflect on everything, I realize that the true legacy we leave is not measured in wealth, in fame, or in material success. It is measured in the values we instill, in the integrity we uphold, in the love we give unconditionally, and in the lessons we pass down through generations. Michael will grow up knowing that bravery is not about never being afraid. It is about acting even when fear is present. Sophia will carry forward the truth that forgiveness is not weakness, and dignity is a treasure no one can take from you. And little Frida, who is soon to join our family, will inherit the story of a woman who chose to stand, to speak, and to defend what was right. A story that will guide her through the inevitable trials of life. To every woman listening, to every person facing a choice that tests your courage, know this: silence protects no one. Lies always surface, and the truth, though heavy and daunting, is the only foundation on which something lasting and beautiful can be built. Choose to speak it. Choose to defend what is right. Choose to love even when it costs you. Choose to leave a legacy that matters. Tonight, as I close this chapter of my life, I take a deep breath and feel the warmth of my family, the laughter of my grandson, the respect and love of those I hold dear. I know that the story of an ordinary woman who refused to stay silent has transformed into a story of courage, justice, forgiveness, and love that will live far beyond me. And as you hear these words, I want you to feel them in your heart. You too can be brave. You too can tell the truth. You too can defend what is right. Because in the end, it is not the years we live, but the truths we uphold, the love we give, and the courage we show that define the story of our lives. This is my legacy. This is my gift. And now it can be yours. Stand up. Speak out. Love deeply. Defend boldly. And remember, brave women change the world, one truth at a time, one heart at a time, one generation at a time.